So have you been thinking about making the move to New Hampshire? Or maybe you already live here and you just want to see what I say are the pros and the cons for the great state of New Hampshire? Well, in today's video, I'm going to go over 3 pros and 3 cons. So stay tuned. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Moynihan. I'm a local real estate agent and investor out of Keene, New Hampshire. And if you are looking to make the move to New Hampshire or just looking to buy in New Hampshire, please feel free to reach out and connect with me. My info is here on the screen or down below in the description. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can stay tuned for the weekly videos. And let's get into the pros and cons. All right, so in this video, I'm going to do like a pro and then a con, and we'll kind of go back and forth on that because some of them are a little bit comparing one to the other and they're a little bit related. So I'm going to go 1 pro, 1 con, and we'll just move our way down the list. So pro number 1 is just the size of New Hampshire. If you like the feel of a small town living state, this is a perfect state for you. It's kind of one of those states where it doesn't really matter what town you are, unless you're in like one of the 3 or 4 big cities we have. You're going to basically know everyone in your town and you'll know your neighbors. And I mean, heck, where I grew up, it was kind of weird if you actually locked your house door, which I know that sounds very unsafe. And I think some of it's changed just because of the way the world has changed. But back when I grew up, most everyone I knew had their front door just unlocked. You could walk in whenever. Of course, you want to knock before, but you could walk in. And then also, like, we had a little village store in the town I grew up, and it didn't matter when, people would just park their car in the parking lot, leave the keys in, leave the car running, and just go in and go grab something quick. Then they'd end up in there for 30 minutes having a conversation. But it's a very small knit community kind of state, and it doesn't really matter what town you're in, you're going to get that feeling. Now, for the con, is also it's a small town state, so there's not really any big city living. You got Boston, which is usually a reasonable drive no matter really where you are in the state. If you're anywhere like south of Concord, it's usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours max. So, I mean, you can always commute down to the city if you want to go get your big city fix in and go do that. But the biggest city in New Hampshire is Manchester with about 110,000 people, and then Nashua comes in second with about 90,000. And those are kind of our 2 biggest, and then there's like the capital, Concord, and stuff like that. But with being such a small state, is it does lack diversity and also like ethnic foods and ethnic communities and stuff like that. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you are looking to move to this state. Also, depending where you're coming from, public transportation isn't really a thing in New Hampshire. So you're going to have to expect to get a car because, I mean, other than a couple of the bigger cities, they have some buses that run, but other than that, there's not a ton of public transportation. And with New Hampshire being a small town state, there's only about 1.4 million people for the population, which falls into about the bottom 25% of the states. Another pro for New Hampshire is it has a low crime rate. It's actually ranked third lowest in the country, only behind Maine and Vermont, which actually is pretty funny because those are both bordering states of New Hampshire. And like I've mentioned before, where I grew up, like locks really weren't used all that much. I mean, you kind of just trusted people. Of course, with today's day and age, it might get a little bit tighter, but I mean, it's a really good state. You know most of the cops, and if you're in a small town, it's usually pretty well tight-knit community. Now, for the next con is simply winters can suck. I mean, you're up in the northern part of the country, and yeah, it gets pretty cold, and yeah, we do get a decent amount of snow sometimes. So again, this is kind of depending on where you're coming from and your experience with snow. But if you're coming from like the south and you've never driven in snow, or you're just not comfortable in snow, you're probably going to want to get a good, reliable car that can actually go through snow. So either that be a four-wheel drive vehicle or an all-wheel drive vehicle. I personally have a front wheel drive vehicle and it does fine, but I did grow up driving four wheel drives and all wheel drives, which helped get my experience in the snow. But the first couple times you're probably going to be a little freaked out, but just make sure you have a good, reliable vehicle. And if you do have front wheel drive, make sure you get studded snow tires because they help a lot. And yes, while winters can suck sometimes up here, it is nice because you get all 4 seasons. So you get to experience everything, which is awesome because who doesn't love a little bit of snow on Christmas? And then a couple of the leaves changing colors during the fall. Summers are still nice and hot, so you get to go swimming. And springtime can get a little bit muddy, but once you get out of mud season, then it gets nice. So our next pro is that New Hampshire is one of the only states that has no state income tax or no state sales tax. So this is really nice because when you go into a store, the price you see on the price tag is the price you pay at the register. You don't have to worry about tax getting included and all that stuff. The only tax we do have is on prepared foods, which I believe is a nationwide thing. I believe, like for restaurants, prepared food, and deli, stuff like that, which is about 8.5%. So that is the only thing that you'll see if you go get a sub. You'll see the tax marked on there, but I believe that's a nationwide thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. And for our next con, like I said, this relates sometimes. So our next con is New Hampshire does have high property taxes. So while you get to save money on no income tax and no state sales tax, you do get hit kind of hard on the property taxes. So you do want to make sure that you check those over before making the move here because they can sound pretty high. I believe the average for New Hampshire across the state is about $5,700 a year, which I know can sound a lot because I'll look at like some properties in like the southern part of the nation and they're like $1,200 to $1,500 a year, which is mind-boggling for me because I've always been a New Hampshire native. So this is just what I know. So when I see like people are setting aside $100 a month for property taxes, I'm like, well, that must be nice. But they're also stuck paying sales tax and income tax. So it's kind of a give and take here. Yeah, it kind of hurts when you're looking and you do have to fit it into your budget while you're shopping for a house, but you also get to save on the other side. And New Hampshire is in the top 5 for the highest property taxes across the country. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, that sums up the 3 pros and the 3 cons of living in New Hampshire. Let me know what you think below in the comments. While some things are really nice, like I personally like having the small town feel. It's pretty cool to be able to know your neighbors and kind of just grow up and you, especially if you're a kid, you have a good tight knit friend group when you're in these smaller communities. And I mean, me personally, I don't mind winter. It can get a little bit annoying when it keeps on dragging on and on and on, but I also don't know what I would do without having a snowy Christmas. So I had one a few years ago where I actually rode my Harley on Christmas, and that was weird. It was kind of cool, but it was weird. I don't think I'd want it forever. But if this video has brought you any value or learned something new, I would greatly appreciate a like, and of course hit that subscribe button so you can catch weekly videos that I release. And again, if you are looking to buy in the New Hampshire area or you're moving to New Hampshire and just have some questions, feel free to reach out. My contact information is here on the screen, down below in the description. And until next time.